Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Relationship Mastery Series, Principles for a Passionate Life and Relationships and a Dynamite Family. I'm Alan Darbonne. I will be your host, and I've gathered 25 wonderful experts from actually all over the world, and they're going to share their years of experience and knowledge and tips with you to be able to provide and support everyone having that passionate life and relationships and the families that they desire and that we all deserve. And I'm really excited today because on the show, I have Dr. Patti Britton. And Dr. Patti Britton is going to share some very wonderful and interesting and unique things. And Dr. Patti is a pioneering sex coach. She is also a nationally certified clinical sexologist. She's certified as a master sex coach. She's co-founder of Sex Coach U, and she's deputy director of Sexual Information and Educational Council of SECUS. And there are many other things that Patti is and that Patti does, and I know you're very busy, and I'm very excited to have you on the program with us today, Patti. And
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. And let me just let our viewers and our listeners know that I'm not the deputy director of SECUS, but that is one of the many roles that I've played in the broad field of sexual health, and very, very happy to talk about that role because at the time in the early 1990s, we released the first guidelines for comprehensive sexuality education, K through 12, which was really a groundbreaking movement. Wow. And maybe we could talk about that because it has so much to do with families and wellness.
Yeah, thank you for correcting me on that.
Absolutely.
We're a little bit off, but I know that you're so involved in so many things and have been, and doing pioneer work with in the whole sexual relationship field.
Yes, thank you.
So one thing I want to let our viewers know is at the end of the broadcast, so be sure to stay tuned to the very end because Dr. Patti is offering a wonderful gift, and this is a free gift, and she'll be explaining it at the end of the interview, and then I'll also tell you exactly how to use the link to be able to receive that. So that's something you can look forward to along with all the wonderful information she's going to be sharing with us. So I'd like to jump right in, if it's okay with you, Dr. Patti, and start this interview off. I've been looking forward to it, and you bring something special, and so if it's okay with you, let's go ahead and jump right in.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. First, tell us what is sex coaching?
Well, I founded sex coaching as the pioneer of this new way of working with clients in, again, the 1990s. Interesting, we're talking about that twice already. And at the time, I had earned my PhD in human sexuality and had been trained in sexuality education, which is the foundation of all of my work, and public health orientation. I'm really an advocate for wellness when it comes to our sexuality. But I also had been a new devotee of this thing called coaching, a la life coaching and personal coaching. And I just found that sex therapy wasn't really a good fit for how I thought the best way would be to work with clients. And so I founded the idea and the profession of sex coaching as a way of working with clients that really takes the tried and true methods of sex therapy and comprehensive sexuality education for adults and marries it with the how of how we work with clients in coaching, because it's very personal. It's very client-centered and whole person-centered. and goal-directed and empowerment-based. So it's a different flavor, in a sense, than a lot of traditional psychotherapy or counseling or even sex therapy was at that time. And it's just been burgeoning ever since.
Yeah, wonderful. Now, could you say a little bit more about how this therapy, sex therapy, would be differentiated from by what you're doing?
Sure. Most people, and I could say a lot, but I don't want to take up a lot of our time. I'm a past president of the premier credentialing organization in the United States called the American Association of Sexuality Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. We call it ASEC. And having been a leader in that organization for over 25 years, it's very important that we understand that in sex education and sexuality counseling and sex therapy, we differentiate based on certain criteria. And a sex therapist, usually at least through ASEC criteria, needs to be someone who is a licensed mental health professional. And there are various modalities or ways that sex therapy works. A lot of it is very similar and infused and informed how I develop sex coaching, because it uses a lot of reframing of our negative self-talk, a cognitive behavioral therapy type style. But really, sex therapy comes from a mental health perspective. And many of the practitioners in sex therapy rely on the Diagnostic Standards Manual, the DSM-5 now, which is really, from a sexological point of view, a little bit on the pathologizing side of things. We have to then diagnose. We have to then call something a disease or a personality disorder. And as a sexologist, I wear and I see the world through a different filter, because sexology is a very empowering, sex-positive, uplifting way of helping a client address what's bothering them or troubling them or distressing them around either sexual behavior or their fantasies or their sense of self as a sexual being. Does that help? Does that help differentiate it?
It does, and it goes right to a point of some of the major differences that I think can be confusing to people. And I really like what you pointed out in terms of the uplifting, positive nature, the recognition that much of what people may feel like, oh, I'm the only one, or we're the only couple, able to recognize that no, this is a normal human process, and it's like with all human processes. At times we run into certain barriers or difficulties, and there are ways to approach them that aren't about anything being really ill or anything wrong. But that someone could just use some tips and some coaches and a little direction. And
well, the way that I train my professionals at Sex Coach University, sexcoachu.com, it's a very intensive and extensive, deep program of over 220 hours. And so I believe very strongly, and I write about this in my own book and the textbook we use, that you have to heal your stuff. You have to be a clear and a clean container for what a client brings to you. And you have to have passion, which of course you can feel as I talk about this. This is the passion calling of my life, being a sexologist. But also you have to have compassion. And there is so much sexual wounding and so much shame in the world around either sexuality or even body image issues related especially to our sexual anatomy and physiology, that I think there's so much of a need for more people to be trained and competent to be able to serve the needs of clients worldwide. And that's really my mission in the world.
Right. And that's a wonderful mission. Say a little bit more about what your own unique model is, because I think that's a real contribution here.
Well, thank you. Well, as I was formulating how I would developed this new thing called sex coaching as a clinical sexologist, as a credentialed, degreed person in the field of the study of human sexuality. I really was grasping with what are the parts of the sexual self. And as I began to frame it, I realized that we have 5 distinct parts to ourselves as sexual beings. And by the way, we're essentially sexual. We are born actually in utero. There are studies showing that we're sexual up until the day we leave Earth and you're no longer in the body. And so there's such a need to understand that there's a mental part of the sexual self, an emotional part. Of course, the physical. We tend to think, where is sex? Well, sex is the physical. It's what we do with the body, but it's far more complex than that. And in my model, I also added energy and spirit. And I like to reframe the whole concept of what I call my needs model actually as a circle, as a wheel, working with energies, working with healing modalities, shamanic techniques. We look at things as a wheel because it's dynamic. And as we look at a wheel, which can be found on my website, which is the same as my name, drpattybritton.com, under Get Coached, for anyone who's interested in this, I actually have a dynamic and interactive wheel that shows you what might be in that mental realm or physical realm or spiritual realm. But in the center of the wheel is energy, because my sense of life itself is that energy runs everything. And that certainly, even if we look at Einstein's theory of relativity, we know that, energy is everything. And that when energy slows down or becomes dense, it becomes matter. And I think sometimes when I think about systems as families, I see when I work with couples in particular, that often it's the blocked energy, the lack of flow, the lack of energy either within themselves or between them, that becomes where they're stuck or blocked. And so my MEVES model is a diagnostic tool. I use it to assess where a client may be stuck or blocked in any of those 5 elements or all of them, which is usually the case. And also I use it to create action steps, because coaches don't diagnose, we assess. Coaches don't treat, we create action steps toward resolution. And so the model has worked very well for me since I created it in the early 1990s. And it's ubiquitous now in the field of sexology for those who have learned about it.
Wonderful. And I really like that differentiation also in terms of those action steps that are aimed at a solution.
Exactly. Exactly.
And what are some of the top issues that you see coming up that are reflections of that blockage?
Well, the blockage can occur in the mind, the emotions, the physical self, energy, or spirit, actually. And a lot of what we see clinically as sexologists or sex coaches, which is, of course, a derivative of sexology, is we see the pandemic of the sexless relationship. And it has been defined very precisely as having sex. That's not the precise definition. Having sex is not well defined. But having sex, one might assume, means sexual intercourse or penis and vagina sex. And when we think of that with a very heterosexual bias, then what we think about is not having sex more frequently than 10 times per year. The reality is, most of the couples that find me have tried to reboot their sexuality together. They've tried to find ways to get started, to find desire, to be refreshed with a new passion for each other and for sharing that very intimate act of sex with each other. And most of my clients have not had sex between 2 and 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And that's because they really exhaust, for the most part, all of the possibilities that they can figure out on their own. So many clients today they're savvy, they're internet savvy, they're well-read, they've listened to podcasts, they've gone to summits like this. They've heard 25 experts every week for whatever period of time, because I'm on a lot of summits and I know what goes on with the summit world. It's a very incredible way to do very intensive education for people in a very short amount of time, but really hear the essence of all of these experts worldwide. It's so wonderful that you're doing this. But the sexless pandemic is one that is not easily resolved. And usually it takes having a resource person or a guide or a facilitator like myself or those I've trained to help that person or that couple really get back on track.
Is there a particular like average length of time that a couple might be doing this type of work with you, or one of the individuals?
You know, thanks for asking that question. And, you know, it's a question that my clients ask me right from the get-go. How long is this going to take, doctor? And I say, it depends on you. And that really is the true answer, because so much of what sexology and sex coaching is about is giving our clients ways to get to know who they are. And getting to the essence of self, getting to that authenticity of the sexual self is a journey. And it's not a cliche, it's real. It takes this step, and then this step, and then this step. And I like to reframe for my clients that that journey has a destination, but that destination is your goal, your dream, your wishes for sexual fulfillment. And it usually takes at least, I would say, probably an average of 8 to 10 sessions. And those 8 to 10 sessions are often, when I begin with a couple, regardless of what their issues are, usually the sexless condition. What I do is I begin with the couple coming in to see me, or I work virtually by Skype, or you use Zoom, I use Skype. And we meet virtually. I like to see my clients on the video, but many of my clients are people who are willing to drive many hours to come and see me. And then I usually break up the couple, whether they're opposite sex or same sex, it doesn't really matter. But I do a very thorough sexual history in my intake process. I have them tell me, what is your sexual identity? What is your sexual story? How did you grow up? What were the childhood messages? What are the things that are in your way? Who do you know yourself to be? And what is your longing? What is it that you would really like to experience from the deliciousness of the human body and mind and spirit and our emotional self to fulfill yourself? And so that process goes on, usually one weekly meeting at a time for a period of several weeks.
Well, two things come to mind for me. One, when you mentioned about it being a journey, and I know that part of my question was a phony question, because I know this is a question everybody wonders about when they in the process.
How long will it take?
And the journey is a good model, because some people actually they like to take journeys or trips, and they just want a quick trip on the surface, and then come home again and be off the trip. For others, they really want to delve into the culture and the depths of the history of that country. And individuals, once they get the problems, and I know from part of your work that with the energy release that comes there comes an interest to, well, we're past the problems. What else is there here? You know, is there something wonderful we haven't even experienced because we've been so focused on the problem? And
I love that.
And some individuals will definitely want to be working, I'm sure, with you and individuals that you've trained in that way also.
Well, it's interesting, because when I wrote my book, The Art of Sex Coaching, which is our training manual, one of the things that I created was I created lists of causal factors or types of roadblocks, sexual or relationship roadblocks that may occur, and then ways of helping that client resolve or overcome their roadblocks. And one of the reasons that people used to come to see me, and those like me, was sexual enhancement. And I'll say to you that, you know, maybe it's the times that we're living in. I don't get many requests for that. And I think it's because we do have access to so much information on YouTube, on Vimeo, on the internet, Googling around, podcasts, meetups. I think meetups have dramatically changed the landscape of what's available.
Right.
I know I get 5 cuddle party invitations every week, none of which I go to, but I track what's going on.
Right.
And so I think that movement toward helping oneself is alive and thriving. But I also want to say a caveat to all of us who are here today, and that is that don't believe everything you hear, don't believe everything you read.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that what's going on in the marketplace today of sexual help or helping professions in general is that one of my dear friends, Dr. Marty Klein, who's a very renowned sex therapist, had an expression that he shared at a national conference. And he said, be wary of who's in the marketplace, because just because you've been a victim doesn't mean you're an expert. And that really, really resonated for me.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Okay?
Just because you were sexually abused as a little girl and you overcame and healed yourself through that, which many of us do, that doesn't mean that you're an expert to then be the healer, the go-to expert for others. Right. And so I think finding credentialed people who are qualified experts to help you open up. You know, sex is complex, it's layered, it's deep. It goes to the core of ourself. And when we peel away the layers, it's like, you know, oh, I want to have a better erection or a quicker orgasm. Great, we can work on that. But sometimes there are deeper layers of what's lingering below the surface, as you put it. And taking that weekender is not really what's required to do the deep healing of the self.
Very, very good point. Very good point. Yeah, you have something to share, possibly of value from your injuries, but that doesn't mean you're an expert. That's for sure. Right. Yeah, very good point. And one other thing that I was thinking about as you're mentioning this, because I've had the opportunity to do trainings as you have, you know, all over the world, and in meeting individuals, the things that are coming up are very, very similar. That goes across cultural lines, and it's kind of a connecting place and a place of compassion that we can all have for each other.
Yes. But the need is out there, and it's greater than ever.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, I yesterday was fortunate enough to do a television show interview, and there was a series of questions. And one of the questions was, what do you see, someone who's been in this field for so long, what do you see as trends? Have things really changed over the course of my career? And the answer is, one thing hasn't changed, and that's the human body and how we do sex. It's still tabby and sloppy. And so, you know, there are variations on that formula, but they're still the same human animals. But what has changed is there are social norms that are shifting. And I think it's so important to talk about too. And I think it relates to individuals and couples. And one is that need or that longing or that urge or that maybe just curiosity to look into the 50 Shades of Grey phenomenon. Because the 50 Shades of Grey trilogy, forget the movie, but the books certainly were a sea change for couples finding permission to explore the dynamics of erotic power exchange. And the other is polyamory. As I travel the world, everywhere I go, from China to the Czech Republic, to Warsaw, etc., to the UK, I'm seeing this infusion of interest and the practices more and more of exploring beyond the monogamous relationship. And I think that's a paradigm shift that's going on. And so again, you know, for all of you who are here today, it's important for you to know there are shifts going on, and maybe this is something you want to explore, but it's often important to have a guide, because you don't just explore these realms and crack open the container of your safe relationship and think, oh, we'll just put a whip in the bedroom or put on handcuffs. No. You need to be educated. You need to know about safety guidelines. And the same is true for a polyamorous exploratory journey, that weekender or a lifelong journey to explore that. So I think those are two really important coaching tips that I want to say today.
Those are incredibly important. I'm glad you brought those out. And it is a wonderful time. I mean, with the availability of information today, everyone is becoming more aware that there's the combination that, the fundamental thing is basically the same, and yet the creativity on that has come out in so many wonderful ways. If you don't go into a place of judgment about it, that'll shrink your brain rapidly.
Thank you.
The creativity is amazing, and it also affords opportunities for individuals that do want to expand their experience. And I really, really hope everyone is taking to heart what you said. As you do that, find a guide that you can trust, because that's vitally, vitally important.
Yes.
But other than that, we're all welcome.
You have our permission.
Right, totally. One thing I want to ask about is, in terms of a couple that's been in relationship for a long time together, and a common thing is that the sexual connection and energy flow begins to kind of wane. And you hear out there, which is really a big piece of misinformation, is that, well, that's natural and there's really nothing you can do about it, that you can expect that when you get into a relationship, and that's the trouble with marriage or whatever else,
Right.
Which is a bunch of bunk, as you know. So
That's right.
what I want to ask is, what tips do you have? Because it is a reality of experience, and
It is.
So
Well, it's the second most common issue that couples present with in sexology. The first being they're not having sex at all,
right.
But the other is, and there's a subcategory to that, which is they've stopped touching. So I see the touchless pandemic as even more tragic than the sexless pandemic, because
it hurts my heart just to hear it.
I know, because we're humans. We live in a body. We live in a body that has the capacity for pleasure and connection with another human life and being. Right. And so getting back to touch is one of the issues that I really push my clients to consider, and I give home assignments. That's one of the reasons that it takes a while to kind of unpack what's blocking you, and then open up the dynamic for you to discover who you want to be as a sexual person with your partner, or if you're alone. And that's because we have home assignments that we send our clients home to do, exercises, practices. And the other piece is that I find that for many of my couples, one of the issues that is plaguing them and stopping them from enjoying life in general is two things. One, they're rushing and they live with this running their life. And I say, take an E-fast. In fact, I have couples now signing agreements in the office with me saying, I agree. I have them do it on a piece of paper to make it real. I agree that I will go on an electronics fast from 8 to 10 p.m. 2 nights a week. What nights are they? Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I get them to make a commitment that they'll stop the damn electronic devices that are literally running their life and running where their attention goes. So touching each other, finding ways to connect body to body, stopping your life being driven by, oh, I think I have a text, bing, 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 all of that, pulling us out of the moment, becoming disembodied and out of the present is what really is going on for so many people. And the other and the last thing is to set a priority that you will make time for us. You must make couple time, not time with the children, not time while you're also checking your email, not time while you're answering the phone from work, but time that's really, I call it sacred time, that's devoted to the two of you, and making it special, even if you call it a love date instead of a sex date. Again, it sounds like such a cliche. Make a weekly sex date. You see that every sex doctor is telling their clients that. But really, if we make time for us time, quality time, things are dramatically going to change because we're going to be slowing down and connecting.
Wonderful, wonderful tip. And you mentioned about the children, time for you, not for the children. That's so important. I mean, I've observed for so many decades now that couples that keep their passion alive and they really are primary for each other, and that energy's flowing there. The kids are standing around observing that, and the spillover to the kids is amazing.
Yes.
And it even goes into the kids' own self-confidence when they see parents with that kind of passion with each other.
Yes.
And when it's not there, you see the opposite. It's like a big source of energy within the family somehow gets kind of dried up, and the kids don't get to bathe in that.
That's beautiful. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Because what I see so many of my couples who come in and say, I never want to do what my parents did. So we're going to be different. We either replicate what our parents were like, or we run the other way, and we are assuring ourselves we'll never be like our parents.
Right.
Those are the two dynamics. I think that happens intergenerationally. And when it comes to comfort around affection or comfort around being passionate together, it's contagious. And it sets such a healthy and positive role modeling for the children to come.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm aware of the time, and it has really flown, and I knew it would. We're going to need to wrap up very shortly. Let me have you mention to the viewers again how they can contact you for more information, since we are going to have to wrap up, but I'd like you to do that.
Well, I say jump over to my website at drpattybritton.com, because you can learn about not only how I coach my clients, but you also can get great blog posts. You can see where I'm traveling in case you're around for a live workshop or training, and also my professional training organizations I co-founded at Sex Coach You and sexologyu.com. So you'll find my emails there, and that's a great way to contact me. And I love visitors.
Wonderful, wonderful. And lastly, I'm wanting to hear about your gifts, and I know the audience is waiting for that. So if you could take this time to let the audience know what your gift to them is today.
Absolutely. Well, it's a very special gift, and I really love sharing it with all of you. It's an ebook that I created based on when I was the host and developing a 3-part DVD program for couples on my interpretation of the ancient teachings of the Kama Sutra, bringing that into the modern day world. And one of the DVDs was about pleasure her first. It was the concept of when a male-female come together and they go through the sensual arts, they then get to the place where when that beautiful experience of connecting and sensuality is over, it's important to pleasure her first. So I wrote an ebook called For Her Pleasure. And it has some beautiful exercises in it. It has sexual anatomy lesson in it. It has ways of actually honoring and pleasuring the woman or the female. So I invite you to take a look at that.
That's wonderful. What a great gift. And for those of you who are watching right after the interview, there's going to be a link, and just click on that link so that you're able to have access to Dr. Patti's great gift. And I want to thank everyone who's joined with us today. I hope we've offered something that's valuable to you. And Dr. Patti, as always, enjoy connecting with you, and I appreciate what you've offered today and what you're offering in the world right now. So thank
you so much. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed being here.
It's my great, great pleasure. And so I'll say goodbye to everyone for now, and we'll see you in the future. Bye now.